think a lot of business owners are probably sort of staggering towards the finish line at the moment, the finish line being the holy grail of a few weeks off at Christmas. Certainly the clients that I'm talking to, many of them are, certainly the honest ones, are saying that they're close to being burnt out. And this is not good. If you're tired, it's clearly bad for your health. You're more likely to make bad decisions. You're also not perhaps setting a great example to the rest of your team. So it's a really big issue. There's no point having a successful business if you kill yourself at the end of the day. So I think that you can sort of break this issue down into several areas: time management, prioritizing, but also spending a little time planning your day or your week so that you're working effectively. One of the things that I do, and it works pretty well, is I have quite a strict calendar that all of my team has access to. So I'll blank out admin time, marketing, sales. Most importantly, arguably, I'll blank out half an hour for a lunch break, try and go for a walk. I'll also make it clear when I need to be not disturbed, but also when am I actually available for meetings, so that the team know that on a Thursday afternoon, I'm around to drop in and talk about any client issues or personal issues that they may have. And I also try and blank out specific times for looking at emails. Emails are fantastic, but they're also a huge interruption and disturbance. And if you're not careful, you can spend 5, 6, 7 hours a day just checking your emails. So I think having a focused point in the day or the week when you focus solely on your emails can really help organize your time better. I think it's also really important that you put in your diary when you're stopping, when you're going home, if you're still in the office or the factory, etc. And then make sure you do go home, and factor in time for spending time with your family. I was going to say going to the gym, but that's not particularly easy at the moment. But put times in your calendar for keeping fit and looking after your own sort of health and well-being, and stick to it. I think prioritizing, particularly at the moment, is more important than ever. Spend a little bit of time at the start of the day planning what you're going to do and sort of creating a to-do list, and maybe try and split these into different categories, such as must be done by me, must be done by someone else in the team. So, what can you delegate to ease the workload on yourself, and what can wait? Don't beat yourself up if you don't get everything on your to-do list done. Times are hard, and many people are time poor at the moment. So if it can wait, let it. I think that possibly covers the busy bit of the question. In terms of not getting the rewards that you feel you deserve for your efforts, I suppose really, is that as a result of changes you've had to implement in your business as a result of COVID, or is it something that's always been an issue? If it's the latter, then really increasing the rewards, and I think this is something we're going to be discussing later today, really it boils down to 4 key things. Bringing in a strategy to increase your turnover, which is A. B, increase your margins. C, reduce your overheads. All 3 of those things result in a better profit. Or how can I improve my cash flow? If the diminishing rewards are as a result of COVID, then I suppose the advice is to A, make sure you're claiming every bit of government support that you're entitled to. There's lots of grants, lots of funding, etc. available. Again, we're going to cover that in a little bit more detail later in the webinar. there's loads of support out there from the likes of 360. So, for example, we've created a couple of WhatsApp support groups where we're constantly posting updates about the government support that's available, etc. You really don't want to be missing out on anything at the moment for obvious reasons. Now is a great time to be considering new products, new services. So discuss those with the other people in your business or your accountant or your advisor, and basically just keep going. It is really tough at the moment, but there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel with regards to the vaccine. That fingers crossed will be along in the very near future, and things will return to normal. If you are struggling, please ask for help. There's loads of it out there. The team at 360 are always willing to talk to people who aren't clients of 360. Please tap into that resource and don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. And I think you're foolish if you don't tap into the help that's out there. So hopefully that answers that question, Chloe. I don't know if Sean or Gary have got anything to add.
We've just got a question from Gary Hobson in the chat. Advice on trading overseas, mainly Europe, regarding VAT, etc. after Brexit?
Well, that will be much easier to answer when we know whether or not there's a deal, and also whether or not the VAT rules are going to change as part of that deal. On the assumption Sean agrees with what I'm about to say, that question's impossible to answer at the moment because we don't know what the rules are going to be. We're at the moment it looks like we're crashing out without a deal. But are they just posturing? Is it a blag in the hope that is it a bluff in the hope that Europe come back to the table with a better offer? So I don't think I'm able to answer that question. Are you, Sean?
During lockdown, I've been watching a lot of quiz programs, and particularly University Challenge, just to see if I can answer any of the questions. And that question from Gary there is probably like a starter for 10 on University Challenge. I don't, like you've just said, it's really hard to actually give a definitive answer, particularly with everything that's up in the air. So, unfortunately, I think you've asked us a question that's really tough to answer.
It could be that you've got to register in the countries that you're trading in. It could be that there's no VAT, like when we're currently dealing with countries outside of the EU. It could just be business as normal. I think we're all hoping that that's the case, but until we know whether there's a deal and what the deal looks like, we're just going to have to play it by ear, I'm afraid, Gary.
I'll just add the only thing I know about well, not the only thing I know, but the one thing that has been communicated about overseas trading with anybody in terms of import duty is that they're looking at suspension of the rules where you have to wait to reclaim that back. You have to not generally pay up front the VAT, so they're looking to change those rules, and that's the only thing they've really mentioned about it, and that was on the agenda before COVID hit. So that's the only definite point I know they're looking to change.
Yeah, that's goods rather than services, isn't it, Sean?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's just goods.
So in terms of planning for 2021, I suppose you've got a plan for no change. You've got a plan for us crashing out without a deal, and you've got to assume that you're going to have to charge. Scenario C could be that you charge VAT or have to register in the different country. Just one of the many complexities that businesses are having to deal with at the moment. And I do feel for the businesses that are both affected by COVID and Brexit.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is for Gary. Many businesses are struggling to find new business at the minute. What advice would you have for them? You're on mute, I think, Gary, still.
Yeah, sorry. There's a number of things to consider for businesses that are struggling at the moment. First and foremost, for me, look after your existing clients. I'm not talking about over-serving your clients per se, but make sure you're in regular contact. You are adding value. You're asking where you can help. You're asking how they're feeling. You're asking what challenges they've got that you can help with. So just add as much value to your existing clients as you possibly can and retain them to the best of your ability. That's the first one. Look after what you've already got. I think the second element for me is that, you know, there's for many businesses out there, there is an alternative customer base. Now, it might be a slightly different offering to the one that you have right now, but certainly one thing that's worked well in my business is opening up what I do to a different target market with a slightly different product offering or service offering. So go out to your wider network that you wouldn't traditionally serve and see how they're feeling, see what challenges they've got, see how you can possibly help them and what that looks like. You know, what price point have they got to play with? Do they want digital, online? Do they want face-to-face? Do they want group? Do they want one-to-one? So certainly one of the things that worked for me as an example is that I went out to my wider audience and they said, look, we really need some help in this area. We can't justify this particular price point, but we can justify this price point. So we developed an online course to that price point very quickly, 3-4 weeks it took us, and actually launch that product. So quite often, look after your existing clients, identify what new clients you can tap into and how they want serving. It might be a new product or a new service. And I think certainly the third thing for me is, and this has really changed over the course of the last 6 months, in the early days of lockdown, people were scared to market. They thought it was inappropriate and immoral to market when so many businesses were struggling. My view has always been is that many people are still in buying mode. They might not want to buy what you've traditionally got to offer. They might want to buy something different. But when a business has got a problem, they want that problem solving. So the third one for me is make sure you've got a very clear plan, which we're chatting about this afternoon, but a part of that business plan should be a marketing plan, and make sure you are clearly marketing what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and the value you deliver to both your existing and your target market. And I don't think if you follow those 3 threads, you're going to go far wrong.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Sean,
sorry, Claire, just before I move on to the next question, you know, we've certainly noticed that a lot of businesses have stopped marketing. You know, that's sometimes the easiest cost to reduce, isn't it? You know, you typically, when some businesses are struggling, they say, right, stop marketing, stop training, stop recruitment, and that will give a lot of businesses opportunities, because you know, if less businesses are marketing, it's easier to get your voice heard. You can sometimes reduce the price of that particular marketing campaign as well. You know, if your competition have stopped investing in training, then that will probably come back to bite them on the bums in 18, 24 months' time. And same goes for if they've stopped recruiting. You know, they may regret that once the markets start growing again. You know, some businesses have actually, some service businesses have actually closed. They've decided they can't work remotely. They need to furlough all of the team and just put the close sign up for a few months. And certainly as accountants, we've found that. So it's about identifying, keeping an eye on what your competition are doing, and then taking advantage of the opportunities that any changes in their activities may present themselves with. And these are all things that need to go in your business plan for the next 3, 6, 9 months.
Andy, you're dead right. And if I can just add to that, you know, and I've seen this going back to, you know, the recession at the end of the late 80s, early 90s, and the one in 2008, 2010, is that look, a business stops marketing, and the reality is that for some businesses, they just don't have any funds at all to spend on anything, let alone marketing. That's the reality of some businesses. But for some businesses that can market but stop marketing because it's a cost saving, what they find then is in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months time, when the market starts to pick up, their pipeline's absolutely dry, and therefore they then start to struggle in an environment where some of their competition is succeeding. So it's a real fine balance. I would always say marketing is one of the things you want to ramp up when things are tough, because you want to come out of it at full speed. And equally, as you said, you know, if you're going to cut training and cut staff, that's great as a short-term strategy, but then you find that you've got no talent coming through in 12 months' time. You've got no managers stepping up to leaders. You're losing some of your good people, and you know, it all starts to catch up on you a little bit. So you know, cut your marketing off at your peril.
And I'm sure any marketing companies or recruitment agencies watching this would agree with those sentiments as well, Gary.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So Gary, what should be in a business plan?
Yeah, great question. Traditionally, business plans have been pretty hefty documents, you know, an inch thick, half an inch thick, 20, 50, 100 pages. And I just think that in today's environment, that's dead. You know, that kind of business model, that business plan is just no longer of use. People don't have the time to pull them together. They don't have the inclination. They don't know what goes in them. And certainly when they have got a plan, they don't spend time updating it regularly, because it's, you know, it is a big, thick, wieldy document. So the one that I advocate is a single A3 page. I've actually got one here. We call it strategy on a page. It's a single A3 page, and it's just got everything you would want on it. And we've used this with clients for raising finance, so it's equally suitable in that area. But there's a number of elements, and I'll just talk you through them. Purpose is the first element. So that's why you do what you do, because what happens in reality for some businesses is they start working too many hours, they're not paying themselves enough money, they start to fall out of love with the business, and they start to question why they're doing what they do. So you've got to understand your why, your reason for doing what you do, and make sure that you've got a passion for doing what you do every single day. That should be the thing that you anchor back to when things aren't particularly going too well. So purpose is the first element. The second one is vision. Have a clear vision of what success looks like in 3 to 5 years. How do you visualize success? So it might be the size of your team, your turnover, the kind of customers or markets you're serving, your offices. Do you own them? Where are they? How many offices do you have? What kind of awards are you winning? What recognition are you getting? So vision is really, really important to understand. That's the destination for you, and the strategies are going to help you achieve that destination. The third element is being crystal clear on your values. These are your attitudes and behaviors that you really stand for. Once you do that, you make sure that you work with customers that share those values, you work with partners that share those values, and you hire and fire your team based on those values. And that's important, because when systems run a business, people run the systems. So if you've got people running the systems and they're not aligned to your values, it's going to result in poor customer service. It's going to result in poor brand and reputation in front of your customers. And that's not something any business wants or needs right now. So get clarity on your values. And we've all had customers that are a royal pain in the backside. We've all had customers that we wince at the phone when they ring us. And that is a sign of a customer that's not value aligned. And it's always a breath of fresh air when you lose that customer, and you can have a sigh of relief. So getting clarity on your values that you hire and fire customers, staff, and business partners with is fundamental. The fourth part, Chloe, is positioning. So this is a bit that many small business owners get wrong, and I talk to many established business owners that still don't have this nailed. So this is really understanding why your customers should buy from you rather than your competition. Some people call it proposition, some people call it USP, but why should your customers buy from you rather than from anybody else? And you need to be able to articulate that in 10 seconds, 10 words. The next bit is exactly who is your target audience. So if you're serving the SME community in the UK, there's 5.9 million small business owners in the UK. And if you're targeting everybody, you're going to spend a lot of money on marketing trying to get in front of those. So be very, very clear who your target customer is. Where are they? What size business do they run? What pains and problems have they got? And then focus your marketing on that smaller, tight niche of customers. And the last part of positioning is really understanding this is all about brand and reputation. What do you want your customers to say about you behind your back? So if you're working with the right customers, your systems, your team are working, and you have your proposition nailed, then they're going to say amazing things and they're going to become advocates and referrers for your business. So they're the foundations from the business: purpose, vision, values, and positioning. Once you've got those foundations in place, you've got to start to build your strategies out. So strategies in my world are broken down into long-term, medium-term, and what I call key actions that are more tactical. And long-term is no more than 12 months. You know, we're in probably the most dynamic, agile, changing environment there's been in a generation. So why would you set strategies beyond a year when things are changing at such a fast pace? So have your long-term strategies that are typically no more than 12 months out. Your mid-term strategies are 3 months out. So what you're going to do in the next 90 days. And then your key actions are more tactical, what you're going to do in the next month. And the idea with that is for those bigger business plans that I alluded to earlier, people don't get round to doing them. They'll dust the business plan off in September and say, I've not done half of the work in there. If you break it down into monthly and 3 monthly chunks, you can actually just eat the proverbial elephant in small bites. So you just do it. You're undertaking your strategy 1 month at a time, if that makes sense. And there are 5 elements in strategy, 5 core functional areas in business. So sales, marketing, systems, finance, and team. So what's your long-term, medium-term, and key actions in sales, marketing, in finance, in systems, and in team? And if you break those 3 levels down into those 5 functional areas, what that means is you can track each of those functional areas on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, but it also gives you the strategies and the tactics that everybody in your sales team can follow, your marketing team can follow, and so on and so forth. And then lastly, the 5th element is understanding what your measures are to track the success. Now, we call them business growth indicators. They're more forward-facing than KPIs, but you need to be tracking the success of your strategies. So how do you measure the performance of your sales function, your marketing function, and so on? And the challenge that many small business owners have, let's say they've set a target of doing £50,000 a month, but they're only actually hitting 30. What they tend to do is they adjust that target. So when the strategy is not helping them achieve their goal, they adjust the target. Well, that's the wrong thing to do because you're compromising on what your ultimate goal was. So what you really should be doing is, if you've got a target of 50 and you're only hitting 30, for example, is you need to be changing the strategies to hit that target of 50. So as a quick recap, you've got to understand your purpose and why you're in business. You've got to understand your vision and where you want to be, your values, which is all about alignment with all of those people around you, your positioning. So those 4 elements give you your foundations, and then your medium, long-term, short-term strategies and how you measure them complete the picture.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Yeah, Gary, as you know, our business plan contains all of the elements that you've discussed. We as you know, we have gone further than 12 months though, because what we've used our strategy document for, as well as everything that you've very eloquently described during that last question, is we want the team to see what our organisation is going to look like in 5 years, in terms of where are the offices going to be, how many are going to be in the team, what sort of managerial roles are going to be created, so that they can see where we're going. The strategy document explains how we're going to get there, although, you know, COVID, etc., we're having to regularly change that. and they can see what opportunities they're going to have if they stay at 360 and follow our core values, etc. So we find that tool really useful, as do the team. And again, as you know, we share our strategy document with everybody in the team, and we try to involve them in the creation of it and the update of it each quarter.
Yep.
And it just helps us sort of make sure that everybody's pulling in the right direction. So we've been through that journey, and we found it extremely useful for our business. Just final point from me, you mentioned about when you don't hit your targets. I think it's equally as important to look at, when you exceed your turnover targets, how has that happened? What have we done well that we need to repeat going forwards? So it's not just a negative exercise looking at your actual V budgets. It can also be a really positive one, and making sure that actually you continue to exceed your targets in the months and years going forwards.
Yeah, having a business plan that's a single page makes it dynamic and agile. And the analogy I use is a bit like a sat nav in your car. So if you go into London and you've got, you're going to get there at 5 o'clock, and you're checking in on your sat nav on a regular basis, as we do, because let's face it, we all want to try and beat the sat nav, don't we, with the arrival time. But if you're checking in regularly and your sat nav says, well, you're now going to get there at 4:30, then you can stop off and have a coffee, can't you? So that's your equivalent of, if you're exceeding your targets, yes, you can reset your goal in terms of, I've got a revised arrival time, but you've now got more cash that you can play with to invest. Or if you're really, really struggling to hit your arrival time and you're getting tight for time, you put your foot down, or you take a slightly alternative route, or you ring ahead and say, I'm going to be a few minutes late. So having a business plan that allows you to modify your strategy based on whether you're underperforming or overperforming means that you can update your plan weekly, monthly, quarterly, as you've indicated. And then therefore it becomes more agile to use as a business tool.
Very hard to beat the sat nav in Hull at the moment, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all. So bearing in mind we're halfway through, we've got about 6 more questions to go before question and answers. So Sean, what financial elements should be within a business plan?
Thanks, Chloe. Typically a business plan will have 4 key elements. You'll have the 3 standard documents that you'll normally see in every business plan, which will be your profit and loss account, which really shows how you're trading. That's normally separated into 3 distinct lines, which will be your sales, which will always be the trickiest element to predict, particularly in these current conditions, and also remembering to factor any seasonality into your business. You'll have your cost of sales, which is what you need to deliver your sales, which gives you a gross profit, and then your overheads, and that will produce your profit and loss. And then you've got your cash flow document, which is probably one of the most key documents in the business plan, showing if you're hitting your targets or not hitting the targets, how is that going to translate to cash in and out of the business. And then you've got your balance sheet. So the balance sheet is the summary of your assets and liabilities. So assets being anything that generates income or brings income or cash into your company, and liabilities, which is anything that is causing a drain of cash out of your company. So those are kind of the 3 traditional areas that you'll see on a business plan, and all of those are driven by the 4th document, which really is the key document, which is the assumptions that you're basing everything on. So key aspects will be, what is your gross profit margin? How do you expect to achieve that margin? What are the debtors' days? What credit terms are you giving to your customers? What's the creditors' days? What terms are you being given by suppliers? If you've got, as a lot of businesses have got now, HMRC arrears, when is that going to start to be repaid? You need to factor that into your cash flow. You also need to factor into any finance agreements you've got, whether they're on hiatus or whether you've got a bounce back or a C-bill where the 12 months payments will start kicking in. And then you've got to look at your existing bank facilities. Are you going to breach any of those facilities? All really key aspects of when you're looking at a business plan. all things that you need to factor in and all things that you need to have as on an agile format. I think Gary mentioned being agile and you mentioned being agile. You need to have a look at what happens if these scenarios don't come off, or if something happens in terms of your debtors model. If your debtors model don't adhere to your expected customer days, what is the effect of that on cash in the business, and what do you need to do quickly to resolve those? So all those sort of documents, the profit and loss, the cash flow and the balance sheet, sum up of the position of the company, normally on a monthly basis, or people can do weekly profit and loss accounts, cash flows, etc. And it just gives you an idea of over the next 12 months where you're going to be as a business if you follow the assumptions that you have in place. And if not, it's always good to do what if scenarios, and if you don't hit these sort of targets, how is that going to affect the cash in your business?
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Sean, I think one of the reports in the financial projections that you produce that I find the most useful is the break-even analysis. You know, what sales do we need to achieve in order to break even, or simply generate enough cash to meet our debt liabilities as they fall due? And I'm sure you'll agree, but I think every business owner should know what their break-even point is, so that they can make sure they are achieving that level of sales each month. And if it looks like they're not going to, we know there's going to be an issue, and what corrective action do we need to take to prevent any problems?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, before you even switch on the lights, I believe every business needs to know what it's costing you even before you switch on the lights. You know, 10 key or break-even position is absolutely critical when you're making decisions or looking at forecasting anything. So you know your finite number, and anything above that, you're doing okay. Anything below that, you need to make some changes, and you need to make some dramatic actions.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to ask all of the panel, what are the benefits of having a business plan in place?
I'll start, as I was the first to unmute. I've got 5 key things that I think a business plan provides. First of all, clarity. So it gives the business owner a document that they can keep referring to and reminding themselves what they're doing and why they're doing it, where they're going and how they're going to get there. Secondly, it gives them focus. I'm not suggesting you look at your business plan every day, but maybe at the start of every week or the start of every month, just remind yourself about what the key strategies are that you've identified that you need to do each quarter, and how you're on track to achieve them. I mentioned earlier that we share our document with our team, so I think it facilitates everybody in the team pulling in the same direction, and everybody knowing where they're going and what opportunities they'll have in the future. It facilitates you getting the correct funding for the business, because if you don't have a business plan, the bank are just going to laugh at you. And finally, it just gives you a tool to run your business more effectively, whether you're a one-person startup or a multi-million-pound turnover company with multiple sites across Europe. I think if you don't have a plan, you can't really complain when you don't get where you want to be, when you want to be there. Sean Gary's unmuted.
Go on, Gary, it's before beauty.
Yeah, I think you've took the words mostly out of my head. For me, it's always clarity, it's focus, as you said, it's accountability. There's a lot of small business owners would not have a set of KPIs that they're aiming to hit, and their accountant, for whatever reason, hasn't helped them put those KPIs in place. That means they've got no real target to hit at the end of the month, the quarter, the year. Well, that's why some drift a little bit. So for me, it gives accountability. You're going to achieve that by the end of the month, the end of the quarter, the end of the year. This is how you measure it. But the other thing for me, other than giving you that clarity, that focus, that accountability, is it gives you and all of your stakeholders one single vision and strategy for how you're going to achieve the results. So having something that's written down and shared with all of your stakeholders, staff, investors, partners like accountants, etc., customers, even suppliers, means that everybody can buy into pulling in the same direction to help you achieve your results. I think without that, it becomes a verbal discussion and it gets lost a little bit in translation. Sean?
I'll add two things. I believe you need to use it as an early warning system. So if you know you're not going to hit targets and it's going to cause you a problem in your cash flow, you need to be speaking to financial institutions or any lenders as soon as you can. Early warning is the best thing for any sort of shortfall you've got to get a buy-in from any lenders. And the second thing I would say is useful for, if you are going to exceed targets, you need to know, make sure you've got the necessary resources to do sales that you're projecting. Particularly at this moment in time, there's a lot of scarcity and a lot of long lead times in getting resources for a lot of businesses, and you need to have that on your radar. If you know you're going to get to a situation where you need resources, you need to make those decisions immediately, not wait until the sales are upon you. So that's the two aspects I would add to what everybody's added.
Okay, thank you all. Gary, how often should a business plan be updated, do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, in an ideal world, monthly. 12 months isn't a long time in the overall scheme of things. So as Sean said there, you need either that early warning sign that you're going to miss target, or that early warning sign that you're going to overshoot the runway. And that's important because, if your sales are going to be, massively over budget, then you can have a problem with working capital potentially. If you're going to be under, then you don't have the funds to be able to invest in the things you want to invest in. So for me, reviewing your performance on the previous month, the previous quarter, and updating your plan on a monthly basis is perfect. And the worst case, quarterly. With a lot of my clients, I sit down quarterly and go through a formal management meeting. We review the performance in the previous quarter, the previous month, and we update and reissue the plan to everybody concerned. But I've got a handful of clients that want to update that monthly because they're in such a fast-paced, dynamic environment. As I mentioned earlier, if you've got key actions that are for your next month, in theory, they should all be done for the next month. So you should be updating the plan to replace those at the end of the month. So ideally monthly, but worst case scenario, quarterly.
Okay, thank you. So the saying cash is king is never more pertinent than right now. What can businesses do to ensure they're generating the maximum amount of cash, Andy?
So I've got 10 tips here, in no particular order. So number one, are you claiming all of the grants that your business is entitled to? Whether it be a grant from the government to help with COVID. There's a lot of, locally we've got the Humber LEP with funding for looking at strategy, financial systems, marketing, pivoting, a word that I hate, but it's a thing nowadays. It's free, easy money, and you need to ensure that you're getting everything that you're entitled to. Number two, make sure you're paying the minimum amount of tax possible. So, working with your accountant to make sure you're claiming all of the possible reliefs, exemptions, expenses, etc. Having a pre-year end discussion with them to see if there's anything you need to do before your financial year end to get your profits and your tax down. Think about changing your year end, think about investing in capital allowances, etc. Number three, have you claimed all of the tax credits that you're entitled to? The two most common ones at the moment being research and development, and also the employment allowance, which is cash back on your employer's national insurance contributions if you employ staff, including directors. Number four, is your business properly funded? So there's a lot of cheap cash around at the moment, government backed. So Sean's already mentioned bounce back loan, he's mentioned Sybil's, which is the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme. There's also the Future Fund, which is more aimed at techie companies. This is all, it's interest-free for 12 months. Bounce backs and Sybils are interest-free for 12 months, no capital repayments, and they keep changing them all the time. So we did think you were going to have to start making capital and interest repayments on the anniversary of the loan drawdown, but they're now changing it so you can go over to interest only to help your cash flow. Number 5, are your credit control procedures watertight? Are you credit checking customers? Are you setting credit limits? Have you automated your sending out of statements, nice letters, nasty letters, etc.? You know, what are your payment terms? Are you on 30 days? Would 14 days be more appropriate? Would that help your cash flow? Have you thought about deposits or payments in advance? These are all things you should be sitting down with your accountant or your business advisor and exploring, particularly at the moment. Number 6, what are your invoicing processes? So how quickly after finishing a project or making a sale do you raise the invoice? You know, some businesses, the business owner or the bookkeeper's really busy and it can take 2 or 3 weeks to raise the invoices, or they don't raise them until the last day of the month. You know, in the current environment, practices like that are crazy. You need to be getting the money into your account as soon as possible. So the second the invoice can be raised, it needs to be going out to your customer. Related to that is reducing your stock and work in progress. So any stock unsold sat on shelves is costing you money, and any projects that drag on for longer than they need to are costing you more in wages and therefore affecting your cash flow. So is there any way you can reduce stock levels or finish projects and get them billed quicker? Number 8, do you have any assets or equipment that you don't need and you can sell? Number 9, have you got any unprofitable products, services or customers that you can either offload or sell? Even better. And finally, number 10, if you do all of that and you're still struggling, are there any tax payments that you can defer? HMRC are being very generous and understanding at the moment, but that won't last forever. So the sooner you can anticipate any tax liabilities that you may be struggling to pay, and you can open dialogue with HMRC, the better. Don't know if Sean or Gary have spotted any that I've missed.
Put your prices up 10%. If you're delivering great value to your clients and you can justify it, put your prices up, because the number of customers you will lose will be far outweighed by the benefit of putting the price increase in, or whatever percentage is appropriate. But often business owners are afraid to put prices up because they fear the repercussions. If the repercussions are your customers are going to walk away, that's a different problem. The problem is you're not serving them and adding enough value. So consider putting your prices up.
Well, I get a text from EE once a year saying my prices have gone up 5%, 7.5%, 10%, and I have a little grumble for 10 minutes and then I crack on. Yeah,
but you don't change provider, do you?
Not if they're doing a good job, no.
And there's the point. Absolutely. So that's the key one for me.
Thank you, Paul. So just a couple of questions left before we go to the Q&A session. Sean, do you think a business owner should prepare the financial sections of the business plan, or should they outsource it?
For me, Chloe, I think it's a marriage of the advisor and the manager or the owner preparing the plan together. Really, a business owner or key management must understand the business, so they've got to have a role within it, within putting together any sort of financial numbers. But obviously, with the help of the advisor, I think for me, as I said, it's a partnership to get the assumptions that I mentioned previously, to get the assumptions absolutely correct, so that you can get the best result. And there's currently, as Andy mentioned about grants, there are some grants out there for the investment that a business has made to get an outsourced advisor to help with the business plan, there's monies available to support that investment. So for me, simply, it's a marriage of the advisor and the owner, which will produce the best results.
Okay, thank you. So final question to ask all of the panel. What sectors are doing well currently? What types of businesses are flourishing? And what innovative things have you seen business owners doing that has impressed you?
Shall I start? There are some sectors that are doing really well at the moment as a result of COVID. So, there's a lot of IT businesses that are doing really well because obviously people are having to work from home, they're having to adapt IT systems, etc. Also, the suppliers of hardware, TVs, etc. There's a lot of people sat at home, furloughed, they're receiving holiday refunds, weekends away refunds, sporting events have been cancelled, gigs have been cancelled. So, there's a lot of people sat around with lots of cash, sat in houses that they've realised they don't like. So they're spending money on improvements, extensions. So a lot of construction companies are doing really well at the moment. During the summer, they were spending monies in the gardens. You couldn't get a hot tub for love nor money. People were spending money on luxury items for the houses, art, etc. New carpets. There's a whole sort of sector doing really well on the back of the current situation that we're in. Residential property prices are doing really well because people are looking for nicer houses. They want gardens now. If they're working from home, they no longer need to be 30 to 45 minutes away from the office. So they're moving out to the countryside, particularly if they only need to commute twice a week now rather than 5 times a week. A lot of marketing companies that specialise on online are doing well because all of the takeaways, pubs, etc. have gone online and started doing click and collect, etc. So a lot of those types of companies are doing well. Obviously, there's a lot of sectors that are really struggling. Hospitality, leisure, retail without an online presence. And I do, clearly, I really feel for those. But as ever, whenever there's losers, there tends to be winners as well.
Yeah, in terms of, I think you've covered all the sectors. What I would say for what I've seen or been impressed by some businesses, there's one business that I've diversified. There was a restaurant that now turned themselves into a bit of a supermarket as well as offering a takeaway offering. So I think that's a really good example of thinking slightly outside the box. People removing unprofitable services and customers has been a really good aspect I've seen where they've taken away although they're losing income, they're losing loss-making contracts. Those sort of decisions have been great, and people getting an online platform to sell to their existing customer base. There's the three. I would say they're the three examples where I've seen people are shining at the moment.
I think professional football clubs have been really innovative as well. Charging people to watch the games online. Locally, Hull City, they've continued to take the monthly payments from their members, despite the fact that there's no football to watch. But in return, you get free stuff from the club shop. So you're sort of forced to buy from them, which I think is really clever. And also prior to lockdown too, they were opening up their restaurants, their hospitality suites, and showing games on the telly that were taking place 20 yards away on the pitch. So football clubs are a really good example of an industry that's been really, really hard, but have adapted to try and, I can't imagine many of them are breaking even, but they're giving themselves a better chance of surviving until we're allowed to let fans back in again, which will presumably be when the vaccine's available. So it's about thinking outside the box, really, and I suppose giving yourself the opportunity to do that. Very hard to sit and think strategically when you're sat in your office or next to your computer at home dealing with the day-to-day issues. Get out, go for a walk, take a notepad with you, go and sit in a field somewhere and just brainstorm. Or pick the phone up and talk to us, bounce some ideas off us. As I keep saying, that there is help available. Please don't be afraid to ask for it.
Just a few examples from me. You know, you can't buy gym equipment for a decent price for love nor money. So if you want gym equipment to work out at home, running gear, bicycles, you know, bike shops can't sell enough bikes. I've been working with an online e-commerce business that sells personalized gifts. They've been working while 4 o'clock in the morning because people couldn't go shopping, so they had to buy their gifts online. And of course, you can't go anywhere these days without there being a circular sign telling you where to stand, which direction to follow. So anybody providing hand sanitizers, labels, printed signs, and goodness knows what else are cashing in at the moment. So anybody in, you know, sports, anybody in, delivery. I also saw an interesting one last week is that the number, I think Zoom went from 10 million subscribers to 300 million subscribers within the first month of lockdown. The number of people that now look at themselves on Zoom online and go, oh my goodness, I've got wrinkles. So they've then been going for, you know, cosmetic surgery, for Botox injections, etc. So there's a whole beauty industry being really buoyant as a result of people seeing how they really look on Zoom. So, you know, absolutely agree. For every business that's been struggling, there's one that's been making hay while the sun shines.
I thought you were looking a bit trim at the moment, Gary.
It's the lighting.
Thank you all. So we've got sort of 7 minutes left now. Any questions? Just pop them in the chat box or the question and answer box. We'll be here till 5 o'clock, so please feel free to answer any questions.
Just while there's any questions coming in, just an interesting statistic that I just want to throw out there. Only 1 in 4 small business owners have a written down plan that's shared with all of their team. And it never ceases to amaze me why 3 out of 4 business owners can try and grow a business without a plan. And I think, you know, if you've really struggled this year, as most businesses have struggled, a lot of businesses have struggled, going into 2021 without some kind of a plan, I think is just suicide. It's asking for trouble. So, you know, just really always interested in why that statistic is so low.
I suspect 1 of the 4 probably has a plan in the head. So, you know, get it on paper and fill the gaps in. And then perhaps the other 2 out of the 4 are blagging it. And some of those will be doing really well, but could they be doing better if they had a plan? Some of them are perhaps just being lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think for me, it also comes down to time management. If you haven't got your time management right, you can't necessarily have that clarity of thinking to get what you want down on paper. And I think that's one of the aspects of some of the lockdown stuff is that people have had a bit more time to think. So they're looking at ways that can help the business. But generally, I think it's because of time management for me.
Yeah, certainly one of the positives that 360 has sort of seen from the horrific times we're going through at the moment is, and you mentioned it earlier, Gary, Zoom. We're having a lot more online conferences because we have to, it's the law. But what it does mean is we're not sat in traffic. We're not having to leave huge gaps between meetings in case the A63 is shut. You know, we're not jumping on the train and going down to client meetings in London. So it's made us more efficient. It means we can have more meetings in the day. It means we don't have to leave gaps. And whilst we still prefer seeing people face to face, I'm sure that in the future we will be having more and more online calls when things do return to normal. It's also pushed us much closer to being paperless. So we've been going 10 years now, and we've probably been 75% paperless for the last 10 years. And that last 25% was proving a real challenge. But being forced to work from home made us have to go paperless. So probably 99% now. The reason we're not 100% paperless is because we still have some clients who aren't digital yet. But with making tax digital for all on the horizon, it's only a matter of time until those clients also have to go digital, and we'll be purely paperless, which will obviously benefit us and the environment going forwards. I think it's also made us think, because everybody's been working from home, it's made us sit down and think, how do I keep in touch with everybody? How do I make sure everybody's okay? So we're having much more regular dial-ins with the team. So I think the internal communications have probably improved since everybody started working remotely, which you wouldn't necessarily think would be the case when all of this started. So it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all. But I think, you know, we're at a turning point now, aren't we? You know, this lockdown will lift soon. We might go into a tiered lockdown as it was pre-lockdown, but you know, having a bit of a plan and a bit of a forecast in place for you know, minimum, ideal, maximum, whatever it might be, as you go into 2021, it just makes absolute and utter business sense and financial sense to have a plan. Whereas, you know, you might have just been a little bit like a rudderless ship. You might have suffered. You might have been successful this year. Going into next year with a plan is very much common sense.
Yeah, it's not easy, but I think every business at the moment needs to be planning for 2nd of December. What happens if we go into tier 1? What happens if we go into tier 2, tier 3, or stay as we are? And some businesses, the tier we go into will clearly have a huge impact. Hospitality, retail, leisure. Others, it'll have less of an impact, but it depends on which supply chains you're involved in ultimately. And if you supply into hospitality, leisure, then you really need as many areas as possible going back to tier 1, don't you?
Yeah.
If you're an accountant, it's probably the tier that we go into is probably less important. So planning is never easy. It's even more challenging than ever at the moment, but I think, to summarise, there's never been a more important time to plan and put something down on paper.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Before we sort of wrap up, anyone still here, feel free, as I say, to ask any questions. It will go onto our YouTube channel tomorrow. So if anyone who hasn't been able to join us can watch it. Any questions you can't think of at the minute, call us on 01482 427 360 or email help@360accountants.co.uk. We'll be here to answer any questions that you may have. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all for joining us and enjoy your evening.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank all of the attendees for attending. I hope they've found it useful. I'd really like to thank you, Chloe, for organising and hosting this. You've done a great job as ever. I'd like to thank Sean for all of his hard work and for attending today. And I'd like to thank our special guest, Gary, for your really useful input. It's been very, very beneficial. I'm sure the webinar attendees will agree. Our next webinar will be next month, and I believe it's on property and property tax. Is that right, Chloe?
Yeah.
Anyone who's got investments in commercial property or landlords of residential properties, buy-to-lets, etc., we'll be talking about tax and potentially some tax reliefs that you may not be aware of. So keep an eye out on social media for details of that. And I hope everybody who's watching has a great evening / weekend. Please get in touch if we can be of any help whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Right.
Take care.
Bye.